On the stone platform, a young girl sat cross-legged, her ice-blue hair cascading behind her like a flowing river. Faintly, it seemed as though a sheen of frost shimmered through her hair, and a subtle chill began to spread into the surroundings. This coldness wasn't overwhelming, but it carried a bone-deep, soul-freezing iciness, as if it could shatter a person's very spirit. What is happening? Lin Dong's face was filled with shock as he watched the scene before him, clearly not understanding why there was such a strange shift in Ying Huanhuan's cultivation. This girl, she's not ordinary, Lord Mink commented softly, his eyes showing a trace of solemnity. Lin Dong nodded slightly. Indeed, what was unfolding before them was not something that an ordinary person could achieve. As the three of them watched, a flicker of pain appeared on Ying Huanhuan's delicate face. Suddenly, her body began to rise slowly into the air, and rings of ice-blue light radiated from her body in waves. Crack, crack. As the ice-blue halos spread out, the ground at the top of the mountain was instantly frozen. In a matter of seconds, the peak had turned into a blue glacier. As these ice-blue halos continued to expand, Lin Dong and the others saw Ying Huanhuan's long ice-blue hair suddenly lengthen, flying wildly in the icy wind. Snowflakes danced around her, as if she had transformed into the fabled snow maiden of ice. The sight was both magnificent and eerily enchanting. With each pulse of the glowing rings, the pain on Ying Huanhuan's face deepened. Suddenly, her tightly closed eyes flew open. In that instant, her previously bright, dark eyes were now completely consumed by an icy blue. Even her pupils had turned into an ice-clear shade. Her gaze was devoid of any emotion. That look was like that of gods overlooking mortals, without joy or sorrow, without good or evil. Lin Dong's face grew serious as he watched the transformed Ying Huanhuan. Her gaze was unfocused and did not settle on him, yet even so, he could feel the cold aura that enveloped his body. This drastic change in Ying Huanhuan stirred a sense of unease in him. He couldn't bear the thought that the once cheerful, lively girl he knew so well had now become as cold as a glacier. Still, despite his anxiety, Lin Dong dared not act rashly. He had no idea what was happening inside Ying Huanhuan's body, nor did he know whether interfering would cause her harm. At this moment, it seemed all they could do was watch in silence. As Ying Huanhuan's eyes opened, a radiant ice-blue glow began to coalesce at the center of her forehead, gradually extending outward until an ancient, ice-blue mark took shape between her brows. The Reincarnation seal? The moment Lord Mink saw the ancient ice-blue seal, his body trembled, and a look of shock washed over his face as he exclaimed in disbelief. The Reincarnation seal? Lin Dong was taken aback, furrowing his brow. What is that? I can't believe it. It's the Reincarnation seal. This girl, she's truly no ordinary person. She's a reincarnator, Lord Mink murmured to himself. After a brief moment, he took a deep breath, looked toward Lin Dong, and spoke in a low voice. Do you know about the reincarnation stage? Lin Dong's eyes narrowed, and he nodded slowly. After life and death comes reincarnation, and reincarnation is eternal. There's no such thing as true immortality, Lord Mink said, his tone indifferent. Even those who reach the reincarnation stage face risks that ordinary people cannot imagine. Just as nirvana practitioners must endure nirvana tribulations, those in the reincarnation stage face the reincarnation tribulation. If they succeed, they transcend and roam the world freely. But if they fail, they are lost in the cycle of reincarnation. Reincarnation tribulation, Lin Dong pursed his lips. This was the first time he had heard of such a thing, but it felt far too distant from his current reality. And what does this have to do with her reincarnation seal? And what exactly is a reincarnator? Lin Dong asked, his curiosity piqued. Those who reach the reincarnation stage are among the most powerful beings under heaven. They have mastered life and death to such an extent that even time itself struggles to erase them. That azure bird we encountered in the Azure Dragon Hall? It's very likely that he, too, was a reincarnation stage expert. Otherwise, there's no way he could still be alive after all these years. Some of these ancient reincarnation experts, if they fail to survive the reincarnation tribulation, may use extraordinary means to preserve a sliver of their spirituality, allowing them to reincarnate and await the opportunity to awaken their spirit and be reborn into the world once more. Those who undergo this process are known as reincarnators, and this girl, it seems, is one of them. So, her previous life was a reincarnation stage superpower? Lin Dong rubbed his forehead. The concept of reincarnation was far too mystical for him to grasp at his current level. Lord Mink nodded. It's likely that not even she knows about this. Her essence spirit must have triggered that sliver of spirituality deep within her soul, which is what caused this strange transformation. However, not all reincarnators awaken. Most will pass through their reincarnations normally, and over time, that spirituality will slowly fade away until it disappears entirely. Only then will the reincarnation stage expert truly fall. Will this change her personality? Or after awakening, will she cease to being Huanhuan and instead become the ancient reincarnation stage expert she once was? Lin Dong hesitated, voicing his concern. If she does awaken, there will certainly be some changes. But in the end, the one in control will still be the person of this life's reincarnation. Lord Mink smiled, as if sensing Lin Dong's worry. Lin Dong let out a bitter laugh, nodding his head. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. From his point of view, he would much prefer Ying Huanhuan to remain the simple, carefree girl he knew, rather than an ancient, reincarnated superpower. You don't need to worry too much, Lord Mink reassured him. She may be a reincarnator, but who can say if she'll ever awaken? As long as she doesn't, she'll always be the Ying Huanhuan you know. Lin Dong nodded again. After a moment, he glanced at Lord Mink and asked, Have you ever reached the reincarnation stage? At his words, Lord Mink's handsome face twitched, and he let out a dry laugh. I came close, but if I had reached the reincarnation stage, I wouldn't have been hiding inside the stone talisman, and you certainly wouldn't have met me. Lin Dong smiled without any mockery. That fateful meeting had undeniably changed both their destinies. If it weren't for Lin Dong, Lord Mink would likely have faded into oblivion by now. And without Lord Mink, Lin Dong might never have come this far. The two of them had weathered countless hardships together over the years, but in the end, they had persevered. She won't stay in this state for long, Lord Mink said as he glanced at the girl floating in the air. His prediction was accurate. Just a few minutes later, the ice-blue aura that had spread through the sky began to fade rapidly, and Ying Huanhuan's ice-blue eyes slowly closed once more. The ice-blue halos gradually receded, layer by layer, back into Ying Huanhuan's body. Her long, ice-blue hair swiftly retracted, and as it did, the icy color faded, returning to its former jet-black hue. When her hair had fully returned to its normal color, her body began to fall from midair. Seeing this, Lin Dong swiftly stepped forward, catching her by the waist. The soft sensation of her slender waist caused his heart to stir slightly, but when he lowered his gaze, he found himself staring directly into the girl's wide, unblinking black eyes. For a moment, the two simply stared at each other. Lin Dong's expression remained calm and unaffected, as though this intimate posture had nothing to do with him. However, after a brief standoff, the girl finally surrendered, a blush of embarrassment and frustration creeping across her fair and delicate cheeks. Looking at the girl's increasingly flustered expression, Lin Dong quietly let out a breath of relief. Thankfully, she was still the Ying Huanhuan he knew. Under her increasingly embarrassed gaze, Lin Dong awkwardly cleared his throat before gently setting her down as if nothing had happened. Huh? What happened to this place? Ying Huanhuan, her cheeks still slightly flushed, tidied her clothes before glancing around at the ice-blue ground covering the mountain peak. She blinked in confusion and asked, bewildered. Lin Dong, Lord Mink, and Little Yin exchanged glances. It was clear that Ying Huanhuan had no recollection of what had just happened. It's due to the formation, Lin Dong said casually with a smile. He chose not to tell Ying Huanhuan what had actually occurred. In his mind, it was better to let things unfold naturally. There was no need to burden her with unnecessary information, and whatever might happen in the future would be up to fate. Ying Huanhuan nodded, not pursuing the matter any further. Then, Her face lit up with unconcealed joy as she exclaimed, "My essence spirit has successfully condensed." Lin Dong smiled, not surprised. Given Ying Huanhuan's strength at the 8th Nirvana stage, her body had already begun to produce essence spirit power on its own, making it much easier for her to condense her essence spirit compared to him. Judging from her current aura, although she hadn't yet broken through to the 9th Nirvana stage, she had reached the peak of the 8th Nirvana stage. It wouldn't be long before she would have the opportunity to attempt a breakthrough, which was excellent news considering the upcoming sect competition. What are your plans next? Lord Mink approached the two of them, casting a glance at Lin Dong before asking. I need to return to the Dao Sect. The sect competition is just around the corner, Lin Dong replied after a brief moment of thought. The sect competition, huh? That's a major event in the Eastern Mystery region. Almost all the well-known sects and factions in the region send their most outstanding disciples to participate. The intensity and danger are even greater than the 100 Empire War, Lord Mink remarked with a smile. If I remember correctly, the sect competition is usually held in the Foreign Demon region, right? TCH, that's a truly dangerous place. The Foreign Demon region? Lin Dong was taken aback and then frowned. What's so dangerous about it? It's one of the ancient battlegrounds where a great war between heaven and earth took place, Lord Mink explained with a slight smile. Don't ask me what that war was about. It's too ancient, and even I don't know the details. All I know is that nearly every powerful being in the world gathered together to face that war. Lin Dong's heart trembled as he recalled the ancient images he had seen within the Great Wilderness Monument. He wondered if there was some connection between the two. After the war ended, that region was corrupted by demonic energy, giving birth to terrifying demon creatures. It's now one of the most dangerous areas in the Eastern Mystery region. Every time the sect competition is held there, many participants lose their lives. However, despite the danger, it's also a treasure trove. Countless powerful beings perished in that ancient war, and if someone is fortunate enough, they could find treasures or inheritances there that could allow them to soar to new heights. Hearing Lord Mink's words, Lin Dong nodded slightly. Such temptations were more than enough to drive people to risk their lives. Are you two coming back to the Dao Sect with me? Lin Dong asked, looking at Lord Mink and Little Yin. We won't be coming this time. I plan to take this guy somewhere else and see if I can help him break through to the 9th Nirvana stage. If he succeeds, we'll head straight to the Foreign Demon region to find you, Lord Mink replied after a moment of thought. Lin Dong nodded. Having Little Yin accompany Lord Mink clearly had more benefits, especially since both of them were demonic beasts. Under Lord Mink's guidance, Little Yin could avoid many detours in his cultivation. In that case, we'll part ways here. Once we're done, we'll come find you, Lord Mink said with a carefree smile. He waved his hand without any further hesitation, and his figure soared into the air. Big brother, we'll meet you in the Foreign Demon region. Little Yin called out with a cheerful grin before following Lord Mink. The two of them turned into streaks of light, shooting off into the distant sky. Let's go as well. Lin Dong watched them leave and took a deep breath, pushing down the slight sadness that came with their parting. He then turned to Ying Huanhuan. I'll go back on my own. Ying Huanhuan smiled mischievously before her body transformed into a streak of rainbow light, speeding off into the distance. Clearly, the shy girl couldn't handle the idea of being carried by Lin Dong while flying. Lin Dong chuckled at her antics, but then his smile faded. Within that rainbow light, he sensed a faint trace of the same icy coldness from before. It seemed that whatever had happened to Ying Huanhuan had left its mark. He just wasn't sure whether that influence would be good or bad. Sighing softly, Lin Dong pressed his lips together and shot forward, quickly catching up to the streak of light in the sky ahead. The journey back to the Dao Sect took about twice as long as their departure. Ying Huanhuan, being a young girl at heart, had thoroughly enjoyed herself during the trip, and Lin Dong, having solved his immediate concerns, was much more relaxed. He was also grateful for her help, so he didn't mind accompanying her for some sightseeing. By the time they returned to the Dao Sect, half a month had passed. We're finally back? As they entered the enormous formation shield surrounding the sect, Ying Huanhuan took in the familiar scenery with a bright smile on her beautiful face. She breathed in deeply, her eyes sparkling with joy. Lin Dong glanced at her, amused. It seemed this girl had thoroughly enjoyed her trip. You should head back to the Heaven Hall. I need to check in at the Wild Hall and let Elder Chunjin know I'm still alive, Lin Dong said, just as he noticed the sound of wind tearing through the air from a distance. Moments later, a dozen figures appeared in his line of sight. Oh no, it's the Sect's enforcement team. Could they be here to arrest us? Ying Huanhuan's eyes widened as she looked ahead, her expression changing in a flash. Lin Dong frowned slightly as he watched the approaching enforcement team. However, he didn't sense any hostility from them. Junior brother Lin Dong, junior sister Huanhuan, the sect master has asked to see you both as soon as you return, said the leader of the enforcement team, a man in his 30s. His face was stern, but his gaze softened a bit when he looked at Lin Dong and Ying Huanhuan. A hint of amusement even flashed in his eyes when they landed on the nervous-looking Ying Huanhuan. Thank you, senior brother. Lin Dong breathed a quiet sigh of relief, clasped his hands in gratitude, and quickly led Ying Huanhuan toward the depths of the Dao Sect. Oh, and junior sister Huanhuan, Uncle Chile said you should return the heavenly phoenix zither as soon as possible, the man called out teasingly just as they were about to leave. Ying Huanhuan's face instantly fell. Great, now I'm definitely going to be confined, she muttered with a pout. Lin Dong shrugged helplessly at her complaints, saying nothing further as he pulled her along deeper into the sect, eventually landing on a serene mountaintop where a bamboo house stood. As they descended, Lin Dong's heart skipped a beat when he saw a figure standing with his hands behind his back in front of the bamboo house. It was none other than sect master Ying Xuanzi. Lin Dong quickly released Ying Huanhuan, and the two of them quietly landed before him. Ying Huanhuan, too, had completely shed her usual lively demeanor. She obediently kept her head down, not daring to glance around, looking nothing like the fearless, adventurous girl she usually was. As the two of them landed, Ying Xuanzi, dressed in white, slowly turned around. Just as he was about to speak, Lin Dong noticed his gaze suddenly fixate on Ying Huanhuan. In that brief moment, Lin Dong could feel a slight contraction in Ying Xuanzi's pupils. He noticed, Lin Dong thought, pursing his lips. The change in Ying Xuanzi's expression was subtle, something only Lin Dong, who had been watching him closely, would notice. However, it quickly returned to normal. You two sure know how to stir up trouble. Not only did you sneak out the heavenly phoenix zither, but you also killed an elder and 2 spirit generals from Yuan sect. You really know how to cause a commotion, Ying Xuanzi said casually, giving the two a sidelong glance. Lin Dong let out a dry laugh. Hearing those words confirmed for him that the person who had secretly helped them earlier was indeed Ying Xuanzi. Father, those Yuan sect guys came looking for trouble. If we hadn't fought back, we might not have made it back alive, Ying Huanhuan muttered in defense. Fortunately, Yuan Ji didn't discover your identities this time. If he had, Yuan sect wouldn't have let this slide, especially with the sect competition coming up. Ying Xuanzi scolded her with a stern glance. Yuan Ji, Lin Dong's eyes narrowed slightly. It seemed that this was one of Yuan sect's chief leaders who had been after them. But, since the matter went unnoticed, let's consider it settled. As long as Yuan sect's actions aren't exposed to the public, there's no issue in killing them. Ying Xuanzi paused for a moment, then added nonchalantly. Upon hearing this, both Lin Dong and Ying Huanhuan exhaled in relief. Huanhuan, go return the heavenly phoenix zither to Uncle Chile. Although it's technically yours, it still needs to be kept in the Heaven Hall until your strength is sufficient, Ying Xuanzi instructed. Okay. Ying Huanhuan obediently nodded. She shot a quick glance at Lin Dong and, in a voice only the two of them could hear, whispered, I'm leaving now, good luck. With that, the girl transformed into a streak of rainbow light, fleeing from the mountain as though escaping punishment. Lin Dong could only smile wryly at her swift exit. That girl. Ying Xuanzi smiled as he watched the rainbow light disappear. His jade-like face softened with undisguised affection and indulgence. As he withdrew his gaze, his expression gradually became more serious. He looked at Lin Dong, and after a brief silence, he asked, You're aware of what's happening to Huanhuan, aren't you? Does the sect master know as well? Lin Dong asked cautiously. I sensed it when she was very young, but I didn't expect her to make contact with that trace of spirituality while condensing her essence spirit. EngSubs sighed, his eyes reflecting a hint of complexity. I never imagined that she would be a reincarnator. I only wonder who she was in her past life. Some ancient superpower, no doubt? Lin Dong remained silent, feeling a bit uneasy. He feared that EngSubs might harbor some reservations about Ying Huanhuan's identity as a reincarnator. Don't overthink it. No matter what Huanhuan becomes, she will always be my daughter. Even if she awakens, it will still be this life's her in control. EngSubs smiled knowingly, sensing Lin Dong's worries. While it's true that Huanhuan being a reincarnator could benefit the Dao Sect, as her father, I would rather she were just an ordinary girl. I have the ability to protect her, so she should be free to do whatever makes her happy. I can bear any burdens for her and provide her with a world of safety. Lin Dong's heart trembled as he looked at the smile on EngSubs' face. He felt a pang of regret for having doubted the thoughts of a father. Seeing the apologetic look on Lin Dong's face, EngSubs waved his hand dismissively and patted Lin Dong's shoulder. By the way, that business you dealt with earlier was well done. You should have seen Yuanji's face when he found out. It was priceless. They brought it upon themselves. We only wanted to obtain the Earth Core Spirit Nectar, but they attacked us first. At that point, retreating would have been useless. We had no choice but to deal with them, Lin Dong said with a shrug and a smile. That heavenly demon mink friend of yours is quite powerful too. His strength hasn't fully recovered yet, has it? I gather he's no ordinary member of the Heavenly Demon Mink clan. You certainly know how to make connections. Heavenly Demon Mink, Celestial Demon Tiger, both incredibly powerful species among the beast clans, EngSubs said with a meaningful smile. You're not bothered by their identities, are you, Sect Master? Lin Dong asked, spreading his hands. I've heard from Uncle Wu Dao that one of the reasons you chose the Dao Sect was because of those two friends of yours. If I had any reservations, wouldn't that be pushing you away? Such a talented disciple. I couldn't bear to let you go, EngSubs chuckled. Looking back, that choice was indeed very wise. If I'd chosen another sect, I doubt I'd be where I am now, Lin Dong said with a grin, slipping in a subtle compliment that made EngSubs laugh. There's just over a month left before the sect competition. Spend this time cultivating quietly within the sect. Understood. Lin Dong nodded. His strength had advanced considerably during this journey, and he needed some quiet time to fully absorb and consolidate his progress. Go ahead, but remember, do not let the matter of Huanhuan being a reincarnator get out. If Yuan Sect learns of this, they might secretly target her. After all, once she awakens, she will be a force to be reckoned with, EngSubs reminded. Yes, I understand, Lin Dong nodded. He saw EngSubs wave him off, and after offering a bow, he swiftly left the mountain. Once Lin Dong departed, the mountain returned to its former silence. EngSubs stood with his hands behind his back, and after a long moment, he let out a sigh. You've known about Huanhuan being a reincarnator for a while, so why are you still sighing like this? A ripple appeared in the space behind him, and an old man in a blue robe with white hair appeared, smiling as he spoke. I just didn't expect her to come into contact with that reincarnation spirituality so early. EngSubs shook his head and replied softly. Since she's made contact with it, the likelihood of her awakening is quite high. I just hope that, when the time comes, she doesn't change too much. To have this lively little mischief maker turn cold as ice, even this old man wouldn't be able to bear it, the blue-robed elder mused, stroking his beard with a bitter smile. The thought of Huanhuan becoming icy and indifferent was evidently too drastic a change for him. We'll have to see how things turn out. Hopefully, she'll be able to suppress that reincarnation spirituality. If not, EngSubs shook his head again, and his worried sigh echoed across the mountain. When Lin Dong returned to the Wild Hall, he was naturally scolded by Chen Zhen and Wu Dao for having disappeared for so long. However, their reprimands were hardly serious, and their stern expressions quickly softened into broad smiles when they realized his strength had advanced yet again. Their scolding held no real weight. In the following days, Lin Dong settled back into his routine. He spent most of his time cultivating or visiting the martial arts hall. His dedication to training left Chen Zhen and Wu Dao very satisfied. As the days quietly passed, the atmosphere within the Dao Sect began to grow more tense. Many disciples, especially those from the Four Halls, were training with intense focus, pushing themselves harder than ever. The cause of this tension was the impending sect competition. In recent years, the Dao Sect had been consistently suppressed by Yuan Sect during the sect competition. In the last competition, Yuan Sect had even caused the death of the senior sister of the Heaven Hall, Wang Yan's sister, which had ignited the anger of the entire Dao Sect. If not for the Dao Sect's higher-ups restraining the disciples, a full-blown conflict might have erupted between the two sects by now. This grudge was deeply rooted and impossible to quell. As time passed, the anger only simmered, waiting for the right moment to explode. That moment was approaching, the sect competition. In that arena, no matter what methods were used, no one could be blamed. Many Dao Sect disciples were waiting for that chance, a chance for revenge. And now, that opportunity was about to arrive. As the tension in the Dao Sect grew, time flew by rapidly. If the recent hall competition had been a warm-up, then now the true storm was about to break. Everyone knew that the sect competition was no mere sparring match between brothers. It was filled with danger, where the slightest mistake could lead to bloodshed and death. Along with the peril posed by the creatures in the foreign demon region, participants also had to constantly guard against ambushes and assassinations by disciples from other major sects. Surviving in such a place required not just close teamwork, but exceptional personal strength. A single misstep could not only doom oneself but also drag down one's companions. Under this pressure, the atmosphere within the Dao Sect had become even more stifling than before the hall competition. Lin Dong sat cross-legged on a rock near the Pill River. A steady stream of powerful primordial energy flowed from all directions, pouring into his body. Faintly, the sound of a roaring river could be heard from within him. Below him was a massive platform spanning several thousand feet. At least 10,000 Dao Sect disciples sat in meditation on the platform, absorbing the vast primordial energy that flowed through the area. In terms of individual strength, these disciples might not stand out, but the sheer scale of their collective cultivation created a grand and awe-inspiring sight. Watching the scene below, Lin Dong stretched lazily. Since returning to the Dao Sect, although he hadn't slacked off in his cultivation, things had been relatively calm. As a personal disciple, he wasn't required to participate in group training, so most of his training was done alone. Just as he was stretching, Lin Dong's gaze suddenly shifted to his right. He noticed a familiar figure dressed in black robes sitting on a distant rock. The heavy black sword on his back gave him an aura of solitude. "Care for a chat?" Wang Yin asked in a low voice, turning his head slightly to look at Lin Dong. Lin Dong hesitated for a moment before nodding. With a flicker of movement, he leaped over and sat down beside Wang Yin. Sitting next to him, Lin Dong glanced at Wang Yan's weathered face, which was marked by stubble and scars. It was clear that this face had once been quite handsome, but now it bore the traces of hardship and time. "I heard you killed a Yuan Sect elder and 2 spirit generals?" Wang Yin asked, turning to Lin Dong. His usually indifferent eyes now flickered with a fiery intensity. Lin Dong was momentarily stunned. He hadn't told anyone about this, so how had Wang Yin found out? "Huanhuan told me. She was worried I might hold a grudge against you because of the hall competition, so she came to me in secret to explain what happened," Wang Yin said. Lin Dong smiled wryly. Ever since returning to the Dao Sect, Ying Huanhuan had been absent, apparently forced into secluded cultivation by her sister. He hadn't expected her to go and tell Wang Yin about this, but her thoughtfulness touched him nonetheless. She underestimated senior brother Wang Yan's magnanimity. Lin Dong chuckled. "She knows me well. I suppose she was just overly concerned," Wang Yin replied coolly. Lin Dong paused, unsure how to respond, so he remained silent. "That business with Yuan Sect, it felt good. Over the years, I've killed my fair share of Yuan Sect disciples, but none of them were particularly important. Compared to you taking out an elder and 2 spirit generals in one go, my achievements are nothing," Wang Yin said with a grin, a fierce glint in his slightly bloodshot eyes. "Thanks to having a friend by my side, otherwise, with my current strength, I wouldn't have been able to kill a great completion life mystique stage expert. Lin Dong shook his head and said. Wang Yin nodded thoughtfully and then said, with your current strength, you could already be considered exceptional even among the younger generation of the major sects in the Eastern Mystery region. However, compared to Yuan Sect's top disciples, there is still a gap. Senior Brother Wang, are you referring to the 3 minor kings of Yuan Sect? Lin Dong's eyes narrowed slightly as he spoke in a soft voice. Little Yuan King, Little Spirit King, Little Lei King. They were personally trained by Yuan Sect's 3 chief leaders and represent the pinnacle of Yuan Sect's younger generation. In fact, they're considered among the most powerful in the entire younger generation of the Eastern Mystery region. They're likely to be our greatest adversaries in the upcoming sect competition, Wang Yin replied, a dark, ruthless glint flashing in his eyes. How strong are these 3 minor kings? Lin Dong asked, pursing his lips. All 3 have fought against life mystique stage experts before. Though they didn't win, they managed to retreat unscathed, Wang Yin said calmly. Lin Dong's eyes grew serious. Even now, when faced with life mystique stage experts, he would only have the option to retreat, as they were on an entirely different level. Engaging them in combat would be an immensely difficult task. That the 3 minor kings could manage such a feat proved just how powerful they were, truly worthy of being trained by Yuan Sect's 3 chief leaders. I once fought Little Lei King, Lei Qian. Wang Yan's eyes lowered as he spoke. Oh? What was the result? Lin Dong raised an eyebrow. Wang Yin remained silent for a moment before opening his robes, revealing a faint, lingering palm-shaped scar on his chest. The edges of the scar were marked by tiny burns, as if they had been seared by flames. Although the scar had healed significantly, Lin Dong could tell that Wang Yin had suffered a severe injury. That single palm strike had nearly cost him his life. I traded a punch for a palm strike. After his palm, I was gravely injured, but he still had enough strength to fight. If I hadn't retreated quickly, I would have fallen to him, Wang Yin said with a self-deprecating smile. Lin Dong's expression grew even more serious. He had fought Wang Yin before and knew well how powerful he was. Yet, Little Lei King, Lei Qian, had managed to defeat Wang Yin. This meant Lei Qian's strength had likely reached the peak of the 8th Nirvana stage, and he might have even begun to generate vitality within him, nearing the threshold of the life mystique stage. Among the 3 minor kings of Yuan Sect, Lei Qian ranks 3rd. Above him are the even more formidable Little Spirit King and Little Yuan King, Wang Yin said with a grim expression. Lei Qian only ranks 3rd. Lin Dong murmured, his expression becoming even more serious. It was clear now why Yuan Sect had been able to suppress the Dao Sect for so long. Even the quality of their disciples was far superior. In this sect competition, including you, Dao Sect only has 3 people who can rival the 8th Nirvana stage. Meanwhile, Yuan Sect, even excluding the 3 minor kings and the 2 spirit generals you killed, still has at least 6 8th Nirvana stage experts, Wang Yin said with a bitter smile. Lin Dong sighed, realizing not only was Dao Sect outmatched in quality, but they were also at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. It seems this sect competition won't be favorable for Dao Sect, Lin Dong sighed before asking. Aside from the 3 minor kings of Yuan Sect, are there any other troublesome figures among the other 6 major sects? The other 6 major sects are no pushovers either. Their disciples are no weaker than those of our Dao Sect. Among them, perhaps the most notable is Ling Qingzhu from the 9 Heavens Taiching Palace, Wang Yin replied. Ling Qingzhu. Lin Dong's hand clenched tightly inside his sleeve, and his body stiffened slightly. It was clear that this name stirred something deep within him, making it difficult for him to maintain his usual composure. Wang Yin noticed Lin Dong's reaction but didn't pry further. Instead, he continued, Ling Qingzhu's reputation among the younger generation of the Eastern Mystery region is on par with the 3 minor kings of Yuan Sect. She's an extraordinary talent, having been personally taken in as the final disciple of the Palace Master of 9 Heavens Taiching Palace. Back then, Xiao Xiao fought against Ling Qingzhu but was ultimately defeated by her. However, our Dao Sect has a relatively good relationship with 9 Heavens Taiching Palace. Barring any major surprises, they shouldn't be our enemies. In fact, if we can ally with them, it would be to our advantage. Ling Qingzhu is incredibly powerful. At the very least, Lei Qian wouldn't be her match. Wang Yan's voice carried a hint of self-mockery. While Dao Sect and Nine Heavens Taiching Palace weren't enemies, Ling Qingzhu was unlikely to involve herself in Dao Sect's grudge against Yuan Sect. At best, she would remain a neutral observer, which would already be the best outcome for them. She's that strong, huh? Lin Dong murmured, the intense emotions in his heart stirring even more deeply. Every major sect has a few outstanding young experts. This sect competition is sure to be a spectacular event. I only wonder how our Dao Sect will fare, Wang Yan said quietly. Lin Dong smiled and nodded, then looked up at the sky. Dark clouds were rolling in from the horizon, gradually blanketing the heavens. I'm quite looking forward to it, Lin Dong said with a soft laugh. Wang Yan turned his head slightly and saw the young man beside him, a faint curve appearing on his lips. There was a blazing sharpness in Lin Dong's smile, along with a trace of eager anticipation. Ling Qingzhu, do you still remember the young boy from the Great Yin Empire all those years ago? At the central peak of the Dao Sect, a massive square atop the towering mountain was filled with countless Dao Sect disciples standing silently. Their gazes were filled with reverence and admiration as they looked toward the center of the square, where several hundred disciples stood in neat rows. Waves of powerful primordial energy surged from their bodies, enveloping the entire square. These disciples, each of whom had at least reached the 6th nirvana stage, were the finest among the 4 halls. They would represent the Dao Sect in the upcoming sect competition. This qualification marked them as the most outstanding disciples of their generation in the Dao Sect. At the forefront of the group stood a few prominent figures, including Lin Dong. Behind him were Jiang Hao and Peng Tong, the top personal disciples of the Wild Hall. When these disciples looked toward the lean figure standing in front of them, they couldn't hide their respect. Thanks to his performance in the hall competition, Lin Dong's reputation within the Dao Sect had reached its peak. Not only did the disciples of the Wild Hall obey his every word, but even the personal disciples from the other 3 halls held him in high regard. With the sect competition fast approaching, the Dao Sect was organizing its forces, preparing to send its contingent to the Foreign Demon region. Standing at the head of the group, Lin Dong glanced around with a somewhat bored expression. It wasn't long before his gaze landed on the Heaven Hall's formation, where Ying Huanhuan was standing. Noticing his gaze, Ying Huanhuan's beautiful face lit up with a playful smile that was full of vitality. Her charming demeanor drew envious looks from many of the surrounding disciples. While Ying Huanhuan was friendly with most of the disciples, it was clear to everyone that her attitude toward Lin Dong was subtly different. Lin Dong smiled back at Ying Huanhuan, just about to say something when the sound of rushing wind came from the platform ahead. Several figures descended, and leading them was none other than Dao Sect's sect master, EngSubs. Following behind him were the hall masters and deputy hall masters of the 4 halls. As EngSubs appeared, the murmurs across the plaza instantly quieted down. All eyes turned toward the sect master, filled with deep reverence as they gazed upon his scholarly, refined figure dressed in white. EngSubs stood on the platform, his gaze sweeping over the enthusiastic young disciples below. His gentle voice, as soothing as a spring breeze, reached the ears of everyone present. As disciples of the Dao Sect, you should all be well aware of the dangers and brutality of the sect competition. This is no friendly sparring match. The only ones you can truly rely on there will be your fellow brothers and sisters. I won't say much more. I just hope that however many of you go, the same number will return. That will be the greatest accomplishment. There was a hint of gravity in EngSubs' voice. His gaze was complicated as he looked at the eager young disciples. He knew that when they returned, their faces would likely carry a new, hardened expression. But some of their companions would be left behind, becoming the price of that hard-earned maturity. Growth always comes at a cost. For this competition, Xiao Xiao will be in command, with Lin Dong and Wang Yan assisting her. I expect the 3 of you to ensure that every single one of your fellow disciples returns safely. EngSubs' stern gaze fell on the 3 figures at the front of the group, his voice firm. Yes, Xiao Xiao responded in a calm, serious tone, her face reflecting her sense of duty. Lin Dong, and Wang Yin exchanged a glance and nodded slightly. This task was far from easy. The 4 hall masters will accompany you to Demon City. However, once inside the foreign demon region, you will be on your own. Are you prepared? The disciples on the plaza, their eyes filled with determination and fervor, showed no sign of hesitation. Seeing this, a smile appeared on EngSubs' face. His voice softened as he spoke. If you are ready, then set off. The Dao Sect will be here, waiting for your triumphant return. As soon as EngSubs finished speaking, excitement erupted across the faces of the young disciples. Heaven Hall's Hall Master, Qi Lei, stepped forward at this moment and waved his hand. He, along with the other 3 Hall Masters, took to the skies. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Seeing this, the Dao Sect disciples followed suit, ascending into the air in a well-organized formation. As they rose into the sky, they looked down at the sea of Dao Sect members below and cupped their hands in a respectful salute. Hua. From the surrounding mountain peaks, the numerous Dao Sect disciples saluted back toward the sky. Waves of booming cheers erupted. Fellow brothers, glorify our Dao Sect. The resounding roar shook the heavens, causing the very air to tremble. The sound ignited the blood within each person, filling their hearts with fervor. Lin Dong exhaled deeply, feeling his own blood surge with excitement at the sight before him. Let's go. Qi Lei's gaze swept across the crowd, and with a downward wave of his hand, his low voice echoed out. As soon as he finished speaking, he shot forward. Swish. As Qi Lei moved, hundreds of disciples followed suit, their figures darting out at the same time. The sharp sound of rushing wind filled the air as the large group of people, like a vast black cloud, surged out of the Dao Sect, moving swiftly into the distance. On the platform, EngSubs watched as the massive group swiftly disappeared. His hand within his sleeve involuntarily clenched. In the last sect competition, Dao Sect had suffered heavy losses. This time, who knew what the outcome would be? This time, the Dao Sect is sending 300 disciples to participate in the sect competition, all selected from the 4 halls. It's not a small number, Peng Tong said quietly as he flew beside Lin Dong, leading the group of Wild Hall disciples. Do you know how many disciples Yuan Sect is sending? Lin Dong asked softly. Probably around 500, Peng Tong replied after a moment of thought. Lin Dong nodded slightly. That was quite a large number, and every participant was undoubtedly among Yuan Sect's elite. From that alone, it was clear that Yuan Sect's strength was indeed superior to Dao Sect's. We're heading to Demon City now, where the major sects will be gathering. The other super sects are likely on their way as well, and soon, we'll meet them there. Of course, it's not just the 8 super sects participating in the competition. Many other powerful forces from across the Eastern Mystery region will also be sending their disciples. It's basically the most elite showdown among the younger generation in the region. Any renowned young expert in the Eastern Mystery region will be there. And let me tell you, it'll be absolute chaos, Peng Tong said with a chuckle. Lin Dong nodded slightly. The foreign demon region was already perilous, and with so many unpredictable participants, it was hard to imagine how chaotic things could get once the situation spiraled out of control. If the other sects are on their way, 9 Heavens Taiching Palace will probably be there too. Lin Dong's gaze drifted into the distance, and an elegant figure emerged in his mind. Back on the summit of the Great Yin Empire, when he had faced her, the gap between them had been so vast that he had chosen to hide. He had once said that when he stood before her again, it would be as an equal. Now, that moment had come. With his current strength, Lin Dong was certain that he ranked among the top of the younger generation in the entire Eastern Mystery region. In a life-and-death battle, he feared no one, not even the so-called 3 minor kings of Yuan Sect. Ling Qingzhu. 5 years have passed. This time, we'll meet face to face, Lin Dong whispered, his fists clenching inside his sleeves as he raised his head, gazing into the distance. A faint smile curled on his lips, growing more pronounced. This time, the winds of fate were converging.